A very, very good evening. Welcome to Dan Really Likes Wine, presented by Pick and Pay. Welcome to harvest season, which is in full swing around South Africa. Some people a fair chunk of the way through their harvest, others only just getting started. I think for a number of people, it's been a far later harvest than it has been over the last couple of years. But the good news that I'm hearing from so many winemakers, and I'm hoping to hear something similar from our two guests today, is that the 2021 crop is looking particularly strong. Now, all we need to do is clear out cellars full of 2020 wine and make sure we get it sold to the world. But good South African wine will always find a home, I firmly believe, and it looks like there is plenty more of it to come, especially from our two guests today. Now, if you saw social media a little earlier on today, you would have known that we were scheduled to have Schalk Opperman from Norhoek on with us. He unfortunately had to cancel just before the show. However, we've managed to find a more than worthy replacement, a good mate of mine. I actually can't believe I haven't had him on the show yet. Probably why I didn't get a Christmas card from him. Dawie Botha. We've spent many hours drinking wine in exotic locations like St Andrews and Leopard Creek. He makes the fine red wines that headline the array of offerings at Anthonij Rupert, and we're going to be cracking open some 2013 Cab Franc and 2011 blend, two of the finer reds I have in the Dan Really Likes Wine cellar, and talking a bit about the harvest, a bit about fires, a bit about wine, and Darby was a great guy to catch up with. So really looking forward to that. But our headline act opens us up, does so in just a moment. Somebody who was on the show with us not that long ago. And when we spoke to her, she wasn't finding her feet. I think they'd definitely been found, but she was in the early stages of getting to know the property at Steenberg, which is where she had touched down following a glittering career making bubbles in the more conventional winelands areas in and around Stellenbosch, making, amongst others, Pongrats and bubbles for the Distel Group, but now at Steenberg. And what makes this really special is that we're tasting a couple of Sauvignon Blancs, and Sauvignon Blanc from Constantia is never a tiresome task, but one of them is her very first vintage, all her own work, not picking up or finishing off on anybody else, but it is hers start to finish, which makes it particularly exciting. And so, live from the middle of harvest, which she's very kindly taken time off to come and join us on Dan Really Likes Wine, Elunda Basson at Steenberg, a very good evening. Welcome back to the show.
Thanks, Dan. Nice to be with you guys, and thanks for the opportunity to check in and chat to you.
I have to say, you're looking obscenely relaxed for somebody who's in the middle of harvest. Clearly, you must have. I think you're doing what I think most winemakers do, which is you get everybody else to do the work, and you sit there, just wait for it all to come in.
Right. Of course, yes, we do, Dan. No worries, buddy. No, we're just privileged to be, as you mentioned, some guys start a little earlier than others. And here at Steenberg, being really nice, cool climate, we're 75% done. So we're just waiting for the rain that's forecasted for tomorrow evening, and then trying to wrap up the white wine harvest, and a little bit of red still outstanding. So, yeah.
So a good chunk of the way done, which is great to hear. What's the verdict on 2021 thus far?
Well, Dan, as you know, winemakers like to keep their cards close, and are very reluctant to, I guess, coin a vintage too early. But at this stage, definitely, the Constantia climate has been kind. And I think the coolness of the ripening season has lent itself to showing us some beautiful chemical analysis, I think, low pHs, high acidities. And so even though the white wine harvest has been significantly down in relation to last year, reds seem to be a little up from last year. And on average, the quality looks phenomenal.
All right, so you're going to keep your cards very close to your chest, but it looks phenomenal. So I'm very glad we've got the official assessment. What about the space? Because it's been spoken of a lot. Do winemakers have enough room in their cellars for all the wine and the grapes coming in based on the challenges we've had in the last year? Where are you sitting in terms of stock left over that at this point would normally have been sold?
I think if we look at our full portfolio, we're very privileged to say that at this point, our harvesting cellar is also spec'd slightly larger than our current production. So we have enough space for the vintage. I think we're almost excited to say that it seems like because of lockdown and a slight delay and a slowdown in sales of our Cup Classiques, our bubblies are actually benefiting from COVID in terms of having slightly longer time on lease, which just improves the quality. But for the rest of the cellar, if we don't have a massive, unexpected increase in volume on the rest of the reds that are still outstanding, we have enough space.
I'm particularly interested to hear you talk about bubbles, because there are a few people who know the art of Cup Classique better than you, and that bottle aging is always spoken of by those who know being such a valuable addition. I think even more exciting, though, will be when that first fully fledged Elunda Basson Steenberg Cup Classique does touch down. We're not quite there yet, but what we are ready to try in just a moment is your very first complete wine at Steinberg, start to finish. It's the 2020 Sauvignon Blanc. Where does the balance sit between, gee, I'm excited, and, oh, this is actually a little bit nerve-wracking?
I think 90%, gee, this is actually quite nerve-wracking, and 10%, ooh, I'm so excited. But it's been a wonderful journey, and I think in terms of winemaking, it's still considered a fairly short period of time, because winemakers need to really get stuck into understanding their terroir, understanding the vineyards that feed the cellar, understanding the wines themselves. And for that, you need quite a few vintages, actually. But 2020 has been very kind to us. We have a beautiful, cool climate, and I think the wines are true to their terroir expression and to the style that Steenberg is quite well known for. And it's just great for me to be able to get stuck in there and to learn about our expression of Sauvignon on the farm, and to try and put a little bit of a personal stamp on it as well.
One of the central points of our discussion last time we were on the show was making the transition from having spent so long crafting extraordinary bubbles to now moving into a broader space where it's not just Cup Classique. You've suddenly got different varietals, different wines to play around with, and the challenge, and you acknowledge the challenge then, but also the excitement of that challenge. Since we last spoke, to now unveiling the Sauvignon Blanc that we are about to taste, what else have you learned? What's been tough? What's been remarkably easy to get through? And what have the final stages of making this wine in a new varietal been like for you?
Yes, Dan. So I think one of the big lessons in life, but especially in winemaking, is to always remain humble. So when your ego starts getting way too big, it makes it really hard to phone a friend and ask for some advice. And I've learned that, and I've made that part of my life philosophy. And so to be very frank, I have not been shy to phone friends and ask for advice, but it's been a wonderful learning curve. And I've just been so lucky in that this terroir gives me beautiful fruit to work with. And so slowly but surely getting stuck in, I think also what's really important about Constantia as a wine route is the relationship that winemakers have with each other, and that we meet up quite often. We exchange a lot of ideas during the year. We taste a lot of wines together. And so there's a lot of sharing knowledge and understanding from the guys who've been in the valley for a very long time, sharing information with those of us who've only joined recently. And so I think that's one of the key lessons of winemaking, is to know your art, but to never assume that you know everything, and to be open and available to share, to ask, and to learn from others.
You've kind of answered the next question I wanted to ask you, which is you've got people like like Buller, who's made so much great wine for Constantia. Matthew Day's got actually a medical obsession with Sauvignon Blanc. He needs some sort of help for this. Justin Van Beek up at Constantia Glen. You've said as much. It's a really close-knit group. In terms of the understanding this new landscape, it's almost you're an artist who's been working in oil and now you're moving to watercolor, and these are the guys who've got to help you with that new terroir. How crucial, how vital was that guidance on the little things that you might not have anticipated needing to know and understand?
Yes, absolutely, Dan. It's been significant. It really has. And again, it sometimes takes a little bit of humility to be able to say that, you know, I've been around the block quite a few times. I've done 23 harvests in South Africa, but still being able to pick up the phone and quickly check some pH and acid additions with Buller. Luckily, Buller, way back originally when I started in wine, Buller was my first employer, my first boss as a very, very young female winemaker in the industry. So that's the other thing that's quite important is it's a small industry. And I think within the South African industry, it's important to build your relationships and to make sure that they're strong. So when you need to pull a favor, they'll pick up the phone.
I know they really are a terrific group, and there is such a kinship to the Constantia Valley, and it looks like you've slotted in very, very easily indeed. People watching you closely are Christa von la Chevalerie, who's been on the show recently, is one of them. Love all the news from Steenberg. All the best, Elunda. You are a rock star. Well, that status is said to be entrenched or not based on the quality of the wine. So let's have a crack at the very first one. This is the Steinberg Sauvignon Blanc 2020. You've mentioned being humble. You've mentioned having to set aside the ego. So to what sense? I know you wanted to kind of imprint something of yourself on the wine, but by the same token, Constantia does to a large degree make its own wine, particularly Sauvignon Blanc, because of the amazing characteristics. So what did you set out to do with this wine, and do you feel you've achieved it?
Yes, I think we're quite excited with the 2020. I think what's important in a wine like the Steenberg Sauvignon Blanc, that maybe it's less about the winemaker and it's most definitely more about the consumer who enjoys Steenberg Sauvignon Blanc for very specific characteristics. And so definitely there is a part to play for the winemaker, but most importantly, we have to stay true to what our Steenberg consumers expect from a Sauvignon Blanc for Steenberg. And I think we've done exactly that with the 2020. I think it's a little bit more sumptuous than the 2019 vintage. It's got beautiful length and finish, and it's got the very familiar characteristics of nice grapefruit zest and elderflower, while still maintaining a nice mineral core, which is very specific to the Steenberg terroir, and which I think sets aside the Sauvignon Blancs that come from Constantia.
Mm. Oh, there's a blast of green capsicum as you get your first whiff of it, and there's a beautiful minerality to that. And it's I know there are a few people. Steve Steinfeld, the Joburg foodie, if you're watching this, Steve hates all Sauvignon Blanc and wishes it didn't exist. Oh, not entirely true. But his main issue is that kind of Sauvignon Blanc that strips the lacquer off your teeth. And there's kind of this good acid and there's bad acid. And this has got that beautifully. It's not kind of rasping down the back of your throat, but it just adds to that sense of balance. And it's also, in terms of that balance, drinking really nicely now. Definitely got the potential to continue to drink nicely for some time. How difficult is it, especially now that you're in Constantia, which is big Sauvignon Blanc territory, in terms of getting a wine that, yes, people can drink if they're in Johannesburg 8 minutes after it's been harvested, but also that people can still drink 3 or 4 years later?
So Dan, I think that's been one of the revelations for me to understand and appreciate since I've joined Constantia as a wine route, and getting to know the Constantia terroir and the Steenberg terroir. And that has been, I think one of the themes of Sauvignon Blanc and cool climate Sauvignon Blanc that Constantia would like to champion always is that we will never be the first winery to release the new vintage Sauvignon Blanc onto shelf, and that our cool climate Sauvignons with their low pHs and their higher acidities and their greener capsicum styles need time. Time in tank, time in aging, time in the bottle, and that there is absolutely no reason why we feel we need to rush into the market with the latest vintage. And I think when people start appreciating and understanding the style of white wines, white blends and Sauvignon Blanc that we make, they will appreciate the additional time that we take to really try and release wines when they're at their peak and at their premium. And in our terroir, that needs a little bit of time.
I think that's a very fair assessment. It's an indulgence that isn't always granted by a fresh Sauvignon Blanc hungry market, but I also think that there is a process of education where people are understanding that a little bit more time doesn't always hurt. And Lisa Harlow, who's a regular fan of the show, saying balance is key in Sauvignon Blanc and not to drink it too young. Aged Sauvignon Blanc can be beautiful. So too can Wooded, which we're going to try in just a moment. We also have a message in from Reginald Peckler up at Cheetah Plains in the Sabi Sands. That's a handful of work of mine you have at this period. Harvesting is extremely precious yet crucial, I guess. You mentioned rain, prediction of rain tomorrow. How do you react to that, or leave all to Mother Nature? It's a good question. You're 25% down, Elunda. There's a big storm rolling in tomorrow. Is there anything you can do about it, or is it just the wine gods at play and you've got to take it on the chin?
A little bit of a combination of both of those. I think most winemakers have been aware of the weather forecast since last week, and so we've been trying to carefully plan the blocks that we feel are crucial to try and harvest prior to the rain, and then we have to leave it. The rest is up to Mother Nature, and what we will have to do after the rain is simply be patient and wait until the sunny days come back and we get the concentration back into the grapes after the dilution effect of the weather and the rain, and take it from there. We have a certain percentage that we can control, and for the rest, I guess that's why we're in this business, is because we respect Mother Nature and we work with what she gives us, and we try to make the most of it.
There was a great piece on Emil's website, his Wine Goggle, the other day, talking about a Sancerre and the coldness and the flip to the heart of it versus a South African Sauvignon Blanc with the sunshine bursts free. And it sounds a bit romantic and frivolous, but I think there genuinely is something to it. And we do get the sunshine in the glass, and there's definitely some of it in wine number one. Now on to wine number two, and I think we can safely say this one's going to be markedly inferior, Elunda, because it wasn't made entirely by you. This is a wine I want to have a look at first of all, though, not just because of wine, and it's going to be fabulous because I have tried it before, but the aesthetic, the labeling. Your job is cellar master, which means you are even more important. And so I've got no doubt you had a role to play in this. Slightly different. I'm seeing the swan is more pronounced. It's a very clean looking feel to it. This being the rattlesnake Sauvignon Blanc. The change is not a monumental change, but it's certainly appreciable. What swayed you in terms of this new look?
Dan, I have to be honest with you. I think Steenberg as a brand has taken the opportunity through this significant experience of COVID-19 and used the time wisely by kind of having a little bit of retrospect view of ourselves and our brand and what we stand for and what we want to represent going forward. And I think with my first vintage, we've taken the opportunity to just modernize our look and feel a little bit, move into a timeless and a contemporary space with our labels and our packaging. And we're trying to just reflect the aesthetics and the quality and the elegance of the wine inside. And we thought there's absolutely no reason, and maybe this is exactly a perfect time for us to turn a little bit of a new leaf on our packaging and hit 2021 with a big bang. New wine, new look and feel, very exciting, and we've received some incredibly positive feedback on the revamp, so we're very happy with it.
I certainly do like the look, and it feels like the right time. The newish Cellar Master has got her first wine out. There's a new look to the packaging. We like to think we're kind of in a new era, not entirely post-COVID, but hopefully getting there. So the timing is good. We'll want it to be matched by some splendid wine, though. It is certainly with that first Sauvignon Blanc. Let's talk about the second one. And it's wine people might have seen if they're not entirely familiar with the territory as a Blanc Fumé or white wine with slight difference. This is Sauvignon Blanc with a little bit of wood. Explain the difference for people who maybe haven't tried the two of them and what it offers you in terms of a different dimension as a winemaker.
Yes, I think, Dan, to start off with, we have to go back and again reiterate and acknowledge that Steenberg is Sauvignon Blanc. That is what we stand for in terms of white varietals. And so we try and express the Sauvignon Blanc in all its different styles. And for that reason, it's always been important for Steenberg to express the Blanc Fumé style or the barrel fermented style, slightly wooded style of Sauvignon Blanc. These days, maybe not the trendiest, maybe not the sexiest style of Sauvignon Blanc out there, but for us, it's very traditional, and we believe that it suits our beautiful cool climate expression. And so the barrel fermented 2019 might not be my wine, but it is definitely one of my favorites because I think 2019 was a beautiful vintage for Sauvignon Blanc in the Constantia Valley and for Steenberg. And I think the beautiful low pH, high acidities that we had in 2019 make for beautiful, easy, ageable wines, which is exactly what the 2019 Rattlesnake is for us. I think it's a beautifully textured wine. It shows a more intricate, slightly more multi-layered kind of style of Sauvignon Blanc because of the richness that is added with a percentage of French oak fermentation and aging. We also usually play with a little bit of fermentation in concrete egg vessels. And so just a slightly different edge to traditional unwooded Sauvignon Blanc.
Yeah, I think in musical terms, you've got that kind of summery pop anthem of an unwooded Sauvignon Blanc. It's light and fresh, and this is a little huskier. There's a little bit of Aretha Franklin coming through. It's got just something appreciably different, but it gives it that bit more substance. And it's not that you can't drink both. I drink both of them very happily, but Sauvignon Blanc can be a divisive grape. There are people for whom the slightly more acidic style, the slightly fresh doesn't work for them. Something like this, especially with certain dishes, it just has that extra level to it, can guide an ardent non-Sauvignon Blanc drinker into something they discover they actually quite like.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think what's important about what you mentioned is that, of course, at Steenberg, we also have two restaurants in Trin and Bistro 1682. And so for us, wine is not to only be enjoyed on its own, but always perfectly paired with food. And I think the fact that we have an unoaked, easier drinking style of Sauvignon versus a slightly more wooded with a heavier, richer palate lends itself to different kind of food pairings. And that's exactly what Steenberg likes to promote, is beautiful wines enjoyed with beautiful food.
Well, Elunda, as a tribute to that, and as a tribute to this rattlesnake, this barrel fermented touch of wood to it, Sauvignon Blanc, I'm going to pair it with something very special tonight, food-wise, and use a glass to wash down my 4-year-old son's leftover fish fingers. That'll be my... Oh dear. Just before we let you go, which we will do sadly because it's always an absolute treat to have you on the show, a little bit of harvest left to go. This is your first Sauvignon Blanc. Throw forward to a year. If you're sitting on Dan Really Likes Wine with us, will there be a couple more wines that by 2022 will have the complete Elunda Basson signature on them? And most importantly, will one of them be sparkling?
Well, Dan, that depends on the rate of sales, I guess. But no, absolutely. We're super excited about the future here at Steenberg. We've got a great team of people. We're really busy trying to reinvent Steenberg and get it into a brand new elevated energy level. We're all super pumped about the future and the future of the wine industry and moving Steenberg even further and outside of the borders of South Africa and increasing our footprint overseas. We've had incredible success and support on the Steenberg Wine Club during lockdown last year. And we want to thank all of our consumers and supporters out there for buying and supporting South African wine. And yes, Dan, I will be here. I am definitely in it for the long haul here at Steenberg. We're having a lot of fun and it's going to take a little bit of time, but there will be many more, hopefully, Elunda Basson wines at Steenberg.
All right. Well, count me amongst that very long list of fans. And I do promise that once the world opens up a little more, I'll get down, as I think I promised you last time, down to Constantia.
Yes, you did.
Drop in at Bistro 1682, pair with some food and celebrate in person. But this is the next best thing, and it's no bad alternative. So, Elunda, thank you. I'll let you get back to what winemakers do during harvest, which is sit in a comfortable couch with a good book, drinking wine, and waiting for Elunda, thank you so much. Good luck with the storm. Good luck with the rest of the harvest, and we'll have you back on the show again soon.
Thank you so much, everyone. Keep well. Thanks, Dan.
There we go. Elunda Basson, cellar master down at Steenberg, formerly the Mistress of Bubbles, and very happy Women's Day. What a great winemaker to celebrate with on that particular day. So her very own Sauvignon Blanc, the 2020, and it's got exactly what a Sauvignon Blanc needs for me. That really savory green pepper blast off the nose. Lovely minerality. It's just a really nice example of Sauvignon Blanc. And then into something with a bit of wood, a little bit more smoke, slightly huskier, just showing the diversity of potential that grapes have. And Elunda knows that particularly well. So too does our next guest. Now, I think he thinks of himself largely as an amateur golfer who occasionally makes a little bit of wine, but the wine that he does make is splendid, and I've drunk plenty of it, and in no small amount with him and his assistant Gary and their intern Gareth and a few others. He makes the top-end red wine at Anthonij Rupert, and what a selection of wine it is. So with no further ado, making his debut on Dan Really Likes Wine after sending me 82 emails this year already. Dan, please can I be on your show? Warm welcome, Dawie Botha. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Dan. Thanks for having me at last.
Well, I have to apologise. It is long overdue because we're good mates. We have been for a long time. We've had so much wine together, and it's been in some pretty cool places, and we can relive some of those memories in just a moment. Before we get into the wine and the Dawie Botha wine story, we heard from Elunda how her harvest is looking. 75% done, not too much left to go. How's your harvest going?
Well, Dan, most of our whites are in at the moment, are done. The bubbles are done, and we still have all our Cab Savs hanging in the vineyard, and we have also all our Pinot Noir from Elandskloof for wine that's still hanging. So we are a little bit worried about the rains coming on Wednesday, and we'll actually have to wait and see how the grapes, how the vineyards react to it afterwards, and we just have to wait it out. But at the moment, the wines we have inside the cellar is looking promising. It's looking good. We had this huge mountain fire that affected us. We might have some smoke taint on some of our vineyards, but we can only test for that after pressing, so after skin contact. So we'll have to wait and see if we have any smoke taint or not.
Tell me a little bit more about that fire, because we tend to think of it in fairly yes or no terms. Either a vineyard has been burnt or it hasn't. So if it hasn't been burnt, we should be fine. But something like smoke can have a major impact. Is there anything you can do about that?
Well, the fire started in at Theewaterskloof Dam, and it came over the mountains. But if you have mostly fynbos in your mountains that burns, it's not so bad. But the problem comes when there's no wind and the smoke lies in your vineyard for a couple of days. You've got a little bit of pieces of ash that gets stuck to your berry on the wax layer at the outside of the berry, and that can go into your tanks and with your skin contact affect your wine. But we don't think we have it, but we're just going to make sure and test after fermentation, after skin contact.
Challenges of being a winemaker, and everybody thinks you just sit around braais drinking wine and having fun. It's a little more challenging than that, and it's particularly challenging for you guys because you're part of this sprawling operation. And I know you were introduced as the man behind the big reds, which we're going to be drinking now, but it's a very integrated process at Anthonij Rupert, not just in terms of sharing information, working together, pairing off knowledge, but also the sheer volume and diversity of the vineyards that you manage and bring grapes in from. What's the balance there between it's so exciting to be working in such a broad space, but also challenging to have to manage that?
Well, it's always fun because we've got a great team, and I think if you have a great team, there's never really a bad day on the farm. But just to give you a quick overview, we've got 5 different wine farms. We've got one in the Darling area, Groenekloof. We've got a farm in Elandskloof, close to Verleersdorp. We've got one in Riebeek, close to Riebeek Kasteel, called Riebeek's River, and we've got a small property in Wellington, and also our main property in Franschhoek, where we have 4 wineries. We have a champagne winery, we have 2 red wineries, and also a white winery. So it's a lot of fun and games to keep it all together. But with a great team, it's always been fun.
And I know a lot of that team. You've got some great people working alongside you, and I know they'd say exactly the same thing about you, Darby, because you're well entrenched despite your relative youth in the wine industry. Give us a little bit of the personal background. How did Dawie Botha fall into the world of wine, and what was the magic of it that caught your attention?
Well, I grew up in Paarl on a table grape farm. I think that's where so I'm a farmer by trade, but Afrikaans plaasseentjie. But then went to school in Paarl, studied viticulture and enology in Stellenbosch. But that's when the wine side actually intrigued me more. And first wine we made in the small little winery in Stellenbosch, I think for me it was drinkable, but I think most other people frowned upon. But they gave me a degree nonetheless. And then I did a little harvest in France, and then a little stint in the US in Mendocino County. And then I started at Leopard's Leap firstly, and then in 2005 I started at Anthonij Rupert Wines, and since then they can't get rid of me.
And I don't think they'd want to, because what you produce is consistently sensational. How important, and it's not the first time I've asked this question of winemakers, but how important was that time overseas, time in France, time in America, broadening your wine education and experiencing very, very different places? How did that help to shape Dawie Botha, the winemaker today?
Well, it's always nice to learn something new and to see how other people make wine and what's their train of thought. And the main thing we always love, because the main thing in France, if you ask them, well, why did they do this? The winemakers just say, no, it's tradition. So a lot of tradition went around in France, and in the US it was completely different. They focused a lot more on picking dates, and running programs were very important to them. But also I think the most important thing is into Africa, and time as a winemaker, never only look at your own wines and your own vineyards. Always kind of look at your winemaker friends, what they're doing, and talk to them, and look at other vineyards. Otherwise, you get tunnel vision very easily. So it's always nice to have a broad perspective and a spectrum about what's going on in the industry.
Well, it clearly works because together with your team, you are consistently delivering, and you have delivered to my cellar some of my very favourite wine. And I have this particular bottle with me, which you're going to start with, the Anthonij Rupert Cabernet Franc. And I have to tell you, Darby, one of the saddest stories that I have in the world of wine was 2 Christmases ago. I had an entire case of this 2013 Cabernet Franc, which was probably my favorite red wine of that year. I liked it that much. And I opened 1 bottle for Christmas. And before I knew it, the rest of the family had helped themselves to the other 5. And I'd seen an entire case of it disappear. But I couldn't blame them because as much as I missed out on it having left my cellar, it was an absolutely cracking wine. And it speaks to what I'd like to chat to first, and that's this Cabernet Franc Renaissance. It's one we've seen quite strongly over the last few years. And I don't think it's necessarily been that we've made bad Cabernet Franc or that Cabernet Franc has never been something of quality. It's just that it seems to have been given its time in the limelight. It's getting time as a single varietal instead of sitting at the back end of a blend, and people are starting to understand it, to discover it, to appreciate it, and realize just what a marvelous, marvelous grape it really is.
Yeah, if you want to make Cab Franc, you have to make it well, and there's a couple of very, very well made Cab Francs in South Africa that can really be proud. And when we started making Cab Franc was in 2005, and we found out that especially from our Franc farm that's got these beautiful decomposed granite soils, we found that the dark fruit profile and the depth and the full phenolic ripeness that we could get from our Cab Franc, which is something we had to keep separate. And we've always, since then, bottled a small amount, nitpicking the best, and just to showcase.
For people who aren't overly Cabernet Franc, I talk from a position of utter bias because I love it as a grape when well made, as you well point out. What is it about Cabernet Franc from a winemaker's perspective that offers you the potential to do something special?
Well, it can handle wood. It can handle. You can work it in the winery. It's a great varietal to work with. It's not too finicky. It's not like a Pinot Noir, but you can get a nice full phenolic ripeness in our South African warmer climate. And what's nice about this one is the ageability of this red wine, and depends on what style you make it. But what I personally love about our Cab Franc in South Africa is you get that nice, almost fynbos character in the wine on the nose, almost like after early cold morning when it's dew and you walk in the mountains, you get that nice fresh smell of Cape fynbos. That's what I really like about Cab Franc, and it's so specific and it's just something unique.
Yeah, that's you can immediately, even if it's in a blend, as long as there's enough of it, there is that green seam that spits out at you wherever you drink Cabernet Franc. But it is just slightly more herbal in South Africa, and I think I have a mild addiction, and it's largely your fault, Darby. So if you made it a little less brilliantly, I wouldn't have quite the same problem spending so much money on Anthonij Cabernet Franc. But I'm very happy to. This particular one, this is 2013. I loved it. Introduce us to this particular wine and why, as a vintage, it allowed you to deliver something quite so special.
Well, 2013 was a long time ago, so again, look at my notes again. But 2019 was before the drought that everyone talked about. But it was a big crop. It was good quality grapes, if I remember rightly. And especially it was a dry December. And in January and February, there was no real heat waves or not a lot of rain at some stage. But the thing I remember very much is that everything ripened at the same time. So if you didn't have enough tank space available, you struggled. So luckily we've got I have the what's that in English? A voorrecht to have to use the tank only once. So I can pick a vineyard when it's ready, and then keep it in a tank on the skins as long as need be, not to be in a rush to change over to reuse the tank. So in that I'm very grateful. And but 2013 especially was a good year. I think this wine scored just above 90 or 91 in Wine Spectator, I think, back in the days.
And I think it's picked up even more acclaim since then, as have the Cab Francs as well. Lisa Harlow, watching from over in the UK. Cab Franc as a single varietal is so much more interesting than in a blend. There's some great examples in South Africa with herbs and spice. And we often think of Shiraz when we think of spice, but for me, Cabernet Franc just does it so well. In terms of the Cabernet Franc that you make, Darby, I know some of it also goes into the blends. How do you decide? Is it the very best that always goes into a single varietal, or do you mix and match a bit when it comes to what's blended as well?
Well, since 2005, we know our vineyards and we know what they can produce, and we've selected 3 Cab Franc vineyards that always produces the best of all the Cab Franc vineyards, and from that we usually do a selection. We keep everything separate in barrels for about 16 months, and then only after about 16 months we start looking at we even keep the free run and the press separate aging, and then after that we'll do a barrel selection on what we perceive as the best quality.
Is it? I mean, you make so much excellent red wine. Is there a particular preference for you? Is there a grape, a varietal that gets a little more attention than the others just because you really like it?
Well, I reckon I'll say when we started here, we always just focused on Cab Franc, Cab Sav, and Merlot. So those 3 will always be my Franc favorites. And throughout the years, with the Cape of Good Hope range coming into play, my new favorite is also the Cape of Good Hope, the Sneeuwkrans Pinot Noir that we're getting from Eland Skroof. So that's been quite an exciting journey. That's continuing as well.
I thought that Sneeuwkrans might get a nod. I've got a bit of it in the cellar as well. It's a glorious one. It's also opened up that whole area, bringing in the Swartland to your offering has been absolutely terrific. You've also got, in terms of your team, just before we jump onto the Anthonij Rupert blend, which is the peak of everything you make. You've got somebody in terms of your benefactor and Johan Rupert, somebody who's got not just an interest in wine, but a really passionate interest in the making of the wine, the whole production. And to have somebody like that who doesn't just invest so much, but has so much time for it, so much genuine concern with the whole process, has to be a huge boon in terms of your entire operation.
Well, it's always a great pleasure. It's always great to have your owner or the proprietor actively involved and also passionate about wine. Just to give an example, usually when we do our blends, he will make a point of it to actually sit in with the blends and play along when we play. And there's 2 blends that's not been released yet that myself and Johan Rupert do personally. So in due course time, you might see those on the shelves, but that might be still a year or 2 away.
So you've got us excited about that. Maybe we'll have you both on the show together and showcase those. Reginald Pecklow, we heard from just a little earlier from Cheetah Plains. Dawie Botha, hence you are a maestro of multiple vineyards. Kindly allow me to crown your new title, SA's Wine President. There we go, Darby. I have a bottle of L'Ormeran Brut Classique Rosé to savor a bit later this week. Good luck with those black varieties left to be picked and continue to prosper. Super proud. Reginald, who oversees a terrific cellar up at Cheetah Plains and is always most poetic in his assessments. All right, well, let's go on to an assessment of our own with wine number 2. And it is a distinct advantage you have, Darby, in that you tend to release your wines a lot later than many other people. Here we've got the 2011 Anthonij Rupert. That's been in the cellar for a year or 2. But it's a wine, it's one of those wines I open with kind of mixed feelings, because part of me can't wait to open it because, gee, I love it. And then part of me goes, well, if I do open it, it means I've got one less bottle in my cellar. And I know that this is wine that's got another 10, 15, 20 years, if I wanted to keep developing and to keep showing. And I suspect it's a battle many other owners of Anthonij Rupert blend do have.
Well, you have to buy 12 bottles a year and then build up your verticals. You'll never run out of wine.
Shrewd advice. Tell me about this particular one. It's 10 years old now. So in a beautiful drinking space, I suspect, although certainly nowhere near the finished product. First of all, what makes up this particular blend, Darby?
Well, the blend has been, the first one we did was 2007 was our first AR blend we made that we released into the market. We played around a little bit, but the blend, the specific one, the 2011, is predominant. It's a Cab Sav, Cab Franc, Merlot, and with a little bit of, with a smidgen of Petit Verdot in there as well. We just love, I love the combination of our Lomera, Cab Sav, Cab Franc, and Merlot. We sometimes use a little bit of our Darling Farm that gives you more of a bright red fruit, but that prominent, that deep, dark, fullness comes from our Franschhoek vineyards. And Petit Verdot is almost like adding salt and pepper to your food. It must make the food taste better, but you don't want to taste it. So it's just a little bit to round the edges and soften everything up.
I love the fact, and we talked about this with Erica Obermeyer last week, that the right wine in the right context can be just that gentlest of splashes. We were comparing the first two vintages of the Element, where one has got 6% cab and the other's got 3%, and there is an appreciable difference to them. And part of it was youth, but a big part of it was just that little bit of wine. And Petit Verdot does exactly that. How do you know? Because I get in trouble with my wife for sometimes over-salting dinner. How do you know that you've just got that right in terms of that little savoury touch that Petit Verdot can add?
Well, Dan, we play around. So let's say we decide on 1%. We'll do a little sample. We'll do a 0.5, 0.25, or 1.5, and we taste them and see where the sweet spot is. Because you'll see that sometimes, if you only look at our blend, every year the blend itself is slightly different, but stylistically the wine will be more or less the same. So you always want, in a specific wine, you want the golden thread, what we perceive as a style, a golden thread that runs through all your vintages. And to get that into the same style, sometimes you have to play around a little bit with the year percentage more, their percentage less, to get the full picture in the end.
And it sounds like it's a lot of work, but I don't think there's a winemaker I know who, for all the long hours and especially harvest time, and then that whole process putting the wine together, doesn't genuinely enjoy it. You've been doing it for a long time now. Is there still a spark with each harvest? Is there still an electricity to creating each blend, to getting each wine just right in as much as you believe you can?
Well, every harvest's fun. If you're on what cannot be fun if you're on a farm in the vineyards, dressed in a golf shirt and shorts to go to work. What's not fun about that? No, just serious. Every vintage has got its challenges, but it's always nice. What I like, or my job satisfaction, is you spend time. You had a wine in barrel for 2 years. You had it bottle aged for another 3 years, and in the end, having someone open a bottle, pour in a glass, and really enjoy it. That's my job satisfaction, to make something that someone else loves.
Well, you got someone who loves this, but then you well know that because you've poured me enough glasses of it in places like Scotland at the Dunhill and up at Leopard Creek, and that sense of reward, I think it must be immense for a winemaker. What about though the sense of time and place with a wine? When you pour yourself a glass like this of 2011. Does it work as a winemaker's diary? Does it take you back to 2011, remembering not just the wine itself, but what was Darby doing? Where was he? What was happening? Does it have that sort of relationship for you?
Yeah, there's always something you remember from every year. Especially if you open a 2011, you think about warm and dry, and also ripening was there, but. What I remember was the great cab and the cab franc we harvested from Lomera. That was one of the things I actually do remember. Everything else, yeah. That's before I had kids as well, so now I remember much less than I used to.
Oh dear, it does affect us all. I want to come back just before we wrap up back to this particular harvest. I know the reds are still to come through, and you'll be bottling them from there. But in this coming year, your releases, as I mentioned, a little bit later than others. What's on the horizon to come out in 2021? And is there anything in particular that you feel as something different, as something that you've really nailed that we should be keeping a very close eye out for?
Well, on the Anthonij Rupert ones, the 2015s will start coming into the market now, and I think 2015 was a really iconic vintage, so something to look out for. On the whites, the Cape of Good Hope whites, the 2019s that's in the market now is brilliant. I think it was a great white year. Then we probably going to release a new Cape Classique as well, but we're still waiting on some label to finalize the labels. But that's going to be something very exciting. It's first release on that. That should be our top tier. And also, what else will there be? Yeah, and then the two new red blends that I can't say a lot about now. So as soon as they're ready, myself or Gareth will give you the inside scoop.
Top secret developments at Anthonij Rupert HQ. Well, I don't think anybody in the wine industry will be anything less than super excited about those. A few fans out there. Joan P. Muller, Dawie is on top. Oh, so there we go. If you don't speak Afrikaans, translation to English, Darby makes exceptional wine that's celebrated the world over for being absolutely awesome. So there we go. How long till harvest finished? How long do you think till you're wrapped up, Darby?
Another 2 to 3 weeks, depending on the effect of the rain.
All right, I know rain is often a good thing, but occasionally it can throw a small spanner in the works. Hopefully not too much of one. Darby, I think we're overdue some golf and some wine, so hopefully that happens soon. You can get your intern Gareth to do some caddying for you. We can get on the golf course. But in the interim, thank you, not just for the time, but you've kept my palate moistened on many an occasion at many an event. With consistently fabulous wine, and I'm a big fan, as you well know. So thank you for jumping on to join me today. Good luck with the rest of harvest. Well done on the firefighting, which I know you've been doing as well. And yeah, we can't wait to, amongst other things, see what this new mystery blend is like. And I don't think I need to be Sherlock Holmes to work out that it's going to be something rather special.
Thank you very much for having me, and thank you for everyone watching. Cheers.
So there we go, Dawie Botha from Anthonij Rupert Wynne, making, amongst others, the two wines we tried tonight, the Cabernet Franc from 2013 and the Anthonij Rupert blend from 2011. And as Darby says, well worth getting them in significant numbers if you can manage them, and putting them away for some time and then just unfolding them as the years go by. So two great winemakers, Darby, a little earlier, Elunda Basson with that first Sauvignon Blanc that she has made in entirety, relatively new to the Steenberg property, a cellar master, but also the rattlesnake with a touch of wood, another example of what can be done with Sauvignon Blanc. And that just about wraps us up. A huge thank you to Elunda and to Dawie. Before we do go, wine flying off the shelves at Pick n Pay, proudly South African. It is your home of South African wine, and it's your home of very, very well priced South African wine with loads of benefits, especially if you're a member of the Pick n Pay Wine Club, which you can join free of charge. You just drop your smart shopper number through to 36775. And what do you get? Well, you get 3 times the smart shopper points. You get 20% off 10 different wines every single month. Some great deals on a Magnum, on a case, as well as some cool competitions, including this month, Durbanville Hills. And you will be hearing from Durbanville Hills over the course of the next week or two, because they've got a super competition running at Pick n Pay. Also, you'll be hearing tomorrow our regular weekly episode. Justin van Beek is the winemaker at Constantia Glen. He takes me through a vertical tasting of their the Sauvignon Blanc Semillon blend, and the 2019 is shooting the lights out. So that is tomorrow. Then on Thursday, I'm coming to you live from the Pigsty in Maitland in Cape Town, the home of Spider Pig Wines, together with Dave Wibberley, as we host some guests and have a little get-together. It's a very small one and very carefully curated one, but a get-together nonetheless to celebrate the wines of Spider Pig. And throw forward to next week, look out on Monday in particular, where together with David Higgs, I will be doing a tasting of the 2015 and 2017 vintages of Kononkop, Le Riche, Star Conde, of Ernie Els, and of Delegraaf. Is 15 better? Is 17 better? Well, we'll have a stab at that with the winemakers on Monday. Really looking forward to that. A little later on this evening, I'll be in about 5 minutes time on Dan Really Likes Wine Instagram Live with Gareth Soldier Boy McClellan, who is John Smith's partner for the Dan Nichols Show versus the Barney's Army team at Royal Johannesburg. That's golf charity that takes place tomorrow. And a little later on tonight at 9 o'clock, join myself and Alan Committee as we gather together for this week's edition of Two Full Tossers. And our special cricket guest this week is Albie Morkel. I think that photo was taken when he was about 17. So that's 9 p.m. tonight with Alan Committee. Albie Morkel is our special guest. Huge thank you to everybody who's been with us tonight. Thank you for watching. Thank you for supporting. Keep drinking South African wine. And we'll see you live on Thursday from the Pigsty with Spider Pig Wines. Have a great evening. Cheers. Goodbye.